Okay, hopefully we're recording now. All right. By popular demand, I'm going over number 11 on the practice test for chapter 1. So this involves some box plots. We're looking at two different types of weed killers. The standard weed killer C and the new one W. We're comparing them. We're looking at 50 test plots. We use the high concentration and low concentration. We're looking at the percent of weeds that grew in each plot that was recorded. All right. And we have box plots that represent all this stuff. And now we're looking for the answer below that does not apply or is not a correct statement. So we're going to go through these and I'll show you how you can get to the right answer. If we look at A, it says that high and low concentrations, the new chemical W gives better weed control than the standard killer C. Let's take a look here. We want to see stuff on the low side because that's going to tell me we don't have a lot of weeds, that low percentage. Now what I'm going to do is in red, I'm going to color and just show all that low stuff I'm seeing for W here. You'll notice, wow, look at the low concentration. That's a lot. You know what? See, it's all W here. Same here, all W. When I start seeing C, that's only when I'm using the high concentration for C. So you'll notice that the percentages all tend to be on the low side for W. And we only begin to match them when we're approaching our second quartile of high concentration here. When we're using low concentration, nearly 50%, we're seeing, nearly 50% of our data for W is less than what we're seeing for C here at a low concentration. We're looking at a high concentration. Again, we're looking, it's not quite 50%, but, close. It's quite a lot here. Seeing a lot of percentages on the low side here before we're even starting to see some in C. And then all these C's get kind of highish here. It's not a wide range, mind you, but still, we're seeing most of those low concentrations in W. So because of that, when I mean low concentrations, I mean low percentages. Most of those low percentages are happening here in W, whether it's a high or low concentration. Seeing low percentages of weeds. So I'm under the impression that W works better, getting rid of A. B, fewer weeds grow at higher concentrations of both chemicals. Well, let's see. When we're looking at the high concentrations of both chemicals, let's take a look. I'm going to focus just on those. I'm not necessarily inclined to believe that because when it says fewer, right? Yep, fewer weeds. If you're looking at the low side here, we have quite a lot of low percentages here for low concentrations of W. We also have them for high concentrations. Now, when we start using high concentrations of C, we just begin to start seeing some of those percentages, some of those comparable percentages. So I can't say that fewer weeds grow at higher concentrations of both chemicals because I'm seeing some pretty low concentrations here, or pretty low percentages, when I'm using low concentrations of W. So, yeah, I can't go with B. C says the results for the standard weed killer C are less variable than those for W. Now, when they're saying variable, they're talking about ranges. If I look at the ranges for C, those ranges for C are significantly less than what we're looking at for W. Look at those ranges. Look how wide these box plots are. They're not very wide. Whereas I'm looking at the width for the box plots in W, it's a lot of variability here, a lot more than I'm seeing in C. So I'm going to cross that out. If I go to D, high and low concentrations of either chemical have approximately the same effects on weed growth. I'm looking here. Let's see. If I'm looking at W, has approximately the same. Well, okay. The ranges are kind of similar, especially if we throw in these outliers. Those width are fairly similar. But if we look at C specifically, look at this. That's the high concentration. That's the low concentration. I'm really not seeing much overlap here. I'm seeing a lot. I'm seeing 50% of my data for the low concentration giving me higher percentages. I'm seeing about 50% of the higher concentration, I'm getting lower percentages. So that's not true. You know what I mean? I'm looking at that. That's not true. So I'm going to have to go with, I'm circling this right now because I'm looking for what's not true. Now, again, going back to C, just to review, it says standard weed killer C has less variable. Definitely does because I have less width. Fewer weeds grow at higher concentrations in both chemicals. That's not true because for W, I got some really low percentages there. It said at both high and low concentrations, W, gives better weed control. Not necessarily, because if you're looking at C, I'm seeing some overlap. So, let's see. I'm looking for the one that's not true. So, actually, I'm going to come back to A. I apologize. It says both high and low concentration wheat, it gives the better wheat. Yeah, it does. And remember, that's because we looked at that earlier and we saw most of these low percentages were all for W. So, A is true. Let's check out E. Some of the results for the low concentration of killer W show fewer weeds growing than some of the results for a higher concentration of W. We were just talking about that. Yeah. It says some of the low ones. Yeah, if you look at the low concentration here, yeah, we're getting some lower percentages here that you aren't seeing at the high concentration. So yeah, that's true for E. So our answer for this would be D. Again, what's the reason? Because it says high and low concentrations of either chemical have approximately the same effect on weed growth. I can't say that because C, for weed chemicals, for the weed killer C, those ranges are quite a bit different. I'm not getting a lot of overlap here. Not much overlap. So that's definitely not true. So hopefully my thought process helped you as to how we arrive at the answer D here. This is a tough question, and sometimes it requires going through examples. And as you can see, sometimes talking through the units, it can get a little confusing. We're talking about concentrations and percentages, but hopefully my explanation helped you.